thank you. And I apologize that probably no one can see me, but I'll try to speak loudly. We are so blessed by our state leadership with the Senator and Bill O'Brien. Thank you. Thank you for having come on board with Ted. I was greatly encouraged when you did. I thought we now have a real chance. So thank you. I want to just tell you a couple things that I know and love about my husband that he may not say about himself. But we met just about 15 years ago, and I'll tell you, he is the exact same person today that he was then. And that is not true of very many of our politicians in Washington. I've also never known Ted to waver on the issues or to change his views on some of the fundamental principles that we all value and know are true via our Constitution. When Ted and I met 15 years ago, we were working in Texas together in politics. And there were two things that struck me about Ted immediately. It really was love at first sight on a personal level, but on a professional level, it was crazy how this guy already in his mid-20s knew what he believed. This is our beautiful daughter, Caroline. Ted knew what he believed because his father and his mother taught him the Bible and the Constitution at the dinner table. And he not only had memorized the Constitution, but he had defended it as a young child in grade school, and that really gave him an incredible grounding. The second thing that struck me about Ted as being outstanding is how articulate he is. And we need an articulate conservative Republican in the White House. So 15 years later, when Ted came and asked me if I'd consider him running for the Senate, I guess that was 13 years ago, once again I was all in. And you know of the incredible election that he had in Texas, and I believe the reason that Texans elected him is the exact same reason that Americans all over this country are going to elect him, and it's because he is fighting for working men and women, and he's going to do what he said he's going to do. Right. There are three characteristics about Ted that I think are absolutely incredible, and I think it's what we need, and I think it's very rare in Washington. The first is that Ted has courage, and Bill and the Senator mentioned that. When Ted defended our Second Amendment rights in the middle of some of the terrible tragedies that we've had in this country, he stood by the Constitution and reminded people that we should not go after law-abiding citizens, but we should protect our rights and go after those that are lawless. It took courage to stand up in that time. The second thing is Ted is going to do what he said he's going to do. When he was elected on fighting to defund Obamacare, he did exactly that when he went to the U.S. Senate, and he was one of the very, very few. A year later, everybody campaigned on defunding, and guess what? We won historical victories in the Senate and in the House on that very issue. And lastly, Ted has incredible judgment, and I want you to know that as his spouse, as a mother of his children, and as a professional. Ted has incredible judgment. He does not base his decisions, his votes, his beliefs on what people necessarily advise him to do. He takes in a lot of information. He's a great listener, but his principles are based on his gut. And he doesn't look around the room to see what others are going to do and how others vote. And he's demonstrated that over and over in the Senate. So thank you for being principled. Thank you for standing up for what you believe. And even as his wife at home, he always does what he says he's going to do. Now, he doesn't always say he'll take out the trash, but if he does say it, he'll actually do it. So thank you for being here. We're overwhelmed by the support in this state. This is a large house, and it's packed to door, and we are so honored by your presence here tonight. Thank you. Thank you.
We love you, Heidi.
Well, thank you, my angel. You can see why Heidi is the love of my life, my best friend in the whole world. And she's going to make an amazing First Lady. Caroline, this precious ball of joy.
Hi, Caroline.
Hi, Caroline.
And then we have in the back Catherine, our 4-year-old, who's taking a nap, who's sleeping. Let me say, Bob and Bill, thank you very much for your leadership, for your friendship, to have Bob Smith and Bill O'Brien and Executive Counselor Dave Wheeler all chairing our New Hampshire team is really extraordinary. To get three of perhaps the three most respected conservatives in the state of New Hampshire all to come together and stand within unity is really a sign of what we're seeing on the ground. And let me say to Steve and Linda, thank you so much for hosting us in your home. Thank you for inviting friends. debate, this is a smoke a cigar with Ted night. The last debate they asked, what would you want your Secret Service nickname to be? And I had no idea, so I sat there and said, I don't know, how about Cohiba? And promptly we get calls from reporters going, did you know Cohiba is the brand Fidel Castro smokes?
It must be.
And our press team was all a Twitter, what do we do? And I said, how about this response? It was a joke. Very complicated response. I know the reporters had trouble understanding it. I suppose I could have said, well, in response to the Castros, I want to take his crops and light them on fire. One at a time. That's a joke. That was another joke.
Did you get it?
I want to thank you all for being here tonight. This last week was an interesting week. I've spent most of the week in Washington. Just a couple of days ago I got up, went to my front door in Washington, and there was a dead fish wrapped in newspaper. That's another day serving in the United States Senate. Well, and then last week,
Pelosi, the piranha
that's the NSA turning the lights off on us.
Just that name does it.
So last week, Pope Francis was in Washington. It was pretty remarkable to have the chance to sit on the floor of the House of Representatives and to hear the Pope address a joint session of Congress. I will note the day before there was a press conference that was pretty awkward. At the press conference, every time the reporters would address a question to Your Holiness, Obama would answer. Well, and then the next day, President Xi of China was in Washington, meeting with Obama. It was something else. I'll tell you, media outlets all across the world recorded this momentous meeting between the world's most powerful communist and the President of China. Now, once again, for our friends in the media, that again is called a joke. When I've told that joke in the past, I am not kidding, there have been headlines, Cruz calls Obama a communist.
Yeah.
Guys, lighten up.
Yeah. Lighten up.
I'm thrilled so many of y'all are here tonight. This is a house of patriots.
Aubrey?
We are in New England, the birthplace of American patriots.
Yep.
And now, as in 1776, our country's in crisis. Every one of us here understands why we're here. This is not a typical time in politics. We are bankrupting our kids and grandkids. Our constitutional rights are under assault each and every day. And America has receded from leadership in the world. Right now, today, sadly, the President of the United States is a laughingstock.
Yep.
Yeah, that's an understatement.
Total.
But I want to give you a word of hope and encouragement. One of the great blessings of having the opportunity to run for president is you get to travel across the country, you get to see what's happening. I want to tell you, people are waking up.
Yeah, that's right.
It is powerful, it is incredible what is happening all over this country. So I want to ask everyone to look forward. Look forward to January 2017. If I'm elected president, let me tell you what I intend to do on the first day in office. The first thing I intend to do is to rescind every single illegal and unconstitutional executive action.
Yeah.
You live by the pen, you die by the pen. And my pen has got an eraser. The second thing I intend to do is to instruct the United States Department of Justice to open an investigation into Planned Parenthood and these horrible videos. The administration of justice should be blind to party or ideology. The only fidelity should be to the laws and the Constitution of the United States of America.
Right. Absolutely.
Yep.
The third thing I intend to do is instruct the Department of Justice and the IRS and every other federal agency that the persecution of religious liberty ends today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That means that every serviceman and woman has a right to seek out and worship God Almighty with all of our hearts, minds, and souls, and their superior officer has nothing to say about it.
That's right.
Yes.
Unbelievable.
That means the Little Sisters of the Poor, a Catholic charity being persecuted by the Obama administration, will discover that the case against them has been dismissed.
Yep. Good.
That's great.
Yes.
That's awesome.
The fourth thing I intend to do on the first day in office is rip to shreds this catastrophic Iranian nuclear deal.
Oh,
Yeah.
The single greatest national security threat facing America is the threat of a nuclear Iran, and we need a commander-in-chief who stands up and says, in unequivocal terms, under no circumstances will the Ayatollah Khamenei, a theocratic zealot who chants death to America, under no circumstances will Iran be allowed to acquire nuclear weapons. And the fifth thing I intend to do on the first day in office is begin the process of moving the American Embassy in Israel to Jerusalem, the once and eternal capital.
That's the first hour.
That's the 50 days.
Now that's day one.
That's right. That's the 50 days.
That sounds like a piece of cake.
That's right.
There are 365 days in a year. 4 years in a presidential term.
4 more. 8
And
for
4
you.
years in a second term.
That's right. 8 for you.
Yes.
By the end of 8 years, there are going to be a whole lot of reporters and editors and journalists who've checked themselves into therapy.
Yeah. I know.
In the days that follow, I will go to Congress, and we will repeal every word of Obamacare.
Yes.
I will instruct the U.S. Department of Education, which should be abolished. I will instruct the Department of Education that Common Core ends today. In the days that follow, we will rebuild the military. We will honor the commitments we've made to our soldiers and sailors and airmen and Marines. And that includes protecting the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms and defend themselves of our servicemen. That means the next time a jihadist comes into a recruiting center in Chattanooga, he's going to meet the business end of firearms wielded by a dozen Marines. In the days that follow, we will finally secure the borders and end sanctuary cities. We will stop the indefensible practice of releasing violent, criminal, illegal aliens, and we will pass Cake's Law. In the days that follow, I will take on the EPA and the CFPB.
Oh, God, yes.
And the alphabet soup of agencies from Washington that descend like locusts on small businesses, killing jobs.
Dodd-Frank.
Dodd-Frank Talk about a bill you don't have to read any further than the title to know nothing good could come of it.
Two guys who know nothing about banks.
The export import.
They know how to hold them up.
That's right.
Yeah.
In the days that follow, I will go to Congress. And we will pass fundamental tax reform. We will pass a simple flat tax. Where every American can fill out his or her taxes on a postcard.
That's right.
And when we do that, we should abolish the IRS. Now some of y'all may be thinking, all of this makes sense to me. It's basic common sense. Live within your means. Don't bankrupt our kids and grandkids. Follow the Constitution. But can it be done?
It can be.
Can we do it?
Yes.
Yes.
You know, Scripture tells us there's nothing new under the sun. I think where we are today is very, very much like the late 1970s. The parallels are uncanny. The same failed economic policies, the same misery, stagnation, and malaise. The same feckless and naive foreign policy. In fact, the very same countries, Russia and Iran, openly laughing at and mocking the President of the United States.
Yeah. So aren't we?
Now, why is it?
I can't say to go out.
Why is it that analogy gives me so much hope and optimism? Because we know how that story ended. All across this country, millions of men and women rose up from the grassroots and became the Reagan Revolution. And it didn't come from Washington. Washington despised Ronald Reagan. By the way, if you see a candidate who Washington embraces, run and hide. It came from the American people and it turned this country around. We went from stagnation to booming growth. Millions lifted out of poverty into prosperity in the American dream. We went from our hostages languishing in Iran to winning the Cold War and tearing the Berlin Wall to the ground.
Let's we folk as Americans.
Yes.
We were proud to be Americans.
Yes.
Amen. I felt that.
Let's have that back.
In January 2017, we will have a president who no longer apologizes for America. The reason I'm so optimistic is simple. The same thing that happened in 1980, it's happening all over again. All across this country, people are waking up. Millions of people, never been involved in politics, had been going to work, had been going to school, had been raising their kids, going to church. And suddenly they're looking around going, what on earth are we doing? You know, a number of y'all went to an event we had in Andover, Massachusetts, a couple of months ago.
Yes.
The home of Jim Lyons. When we called and asked Jim to host it, we asked, do you think you could get 30, 40 people together? He said, yeah, I think I could do that. With 650 people come out to his banquet. And they were turning people away. And this is in bright blue, Massachusetts.
That's right. I was there. I can't stand those speakers.
You know what was the most incredible thing about that gathering? You looked all across the backyard. And everywhere you looked, you were looking at Reagan Democrats. You were looking at truck drivers and mechanics. You were looking at police officers and school teachers. You were looking at working men and women that are getting left behind in the Obama economy and are hungry for the America that every one of us love.
Yeah.
That same thing is happening again. You know, when I launched this campaign 6 months ago, the New York Times promptly said, Cruz cannot win. Because the Washington elites despise him. I kind of thought that was the whole point of the campaign.
All right.
Listen, if you think things are going great in Washington, that we need to keep going in the same basic direction, just kind of fiddle around the edges, then I ain't your guy.
You're our guy.
If you think, on the other hand, that Washington is fundamentally broken, that there is a bipartisan corruption of career politicians in both parties who get in bed with lobbyists and special interests and grow and grow and grow government, and that we need to bring power out of Washington and back to we the people.
That's right.
That is what this campaign is all about. We are building a grassroots army all across the state of New Hampshire and all across the country. You know, the last fundraising reports that were fired a couple of months ago, there were 17 Republican candidates at the time. Do you know which campaign raised the most hard money?
Ted Cruz?
We did. In just over 3 months together, we raised over $14.3 million.
Right. Right.
Second place was Jeb Bush at $11.4 million. Now, Bill, if I'd have told you 6 months ago that we were going to outraise every Republican in the field, including outraising Jeb Bush by $3 million, you'd have said I was bark at the moon crazy.
Or something like that.
But do you know how we did that? To date, our campaign has received over 300,000 contributions.
Awesome.
All over the country, from all 50 states, people going to tedcruz.org. Tedcruz.org. Tedcruz.org.
One more time.
What was that again?
Our average contribution was $81.
Wow.
That is the power of the grassroots.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let me say two things wrapping up. First of all, for all of us, when we think of freedom, it's not some abstract concept we read about in a school book. Freedom is personal and real to each of us. You know, for me, I think about my mom. My mom, Irish and Italian. Born in Wilmington, Delaware. Her mom was the second youngest of 17 kids.
Wow.
They were Irish Catholic.
Yeah.
They didn't know what else to do on a Saturday night. It was a blue-collar family. My mom became the first person in her family ever to go to college. Now, my grandfather, my mom's dad, was not an easy man. He was drunk. And he didn't think women should be educated. And he certainly didn't think his daughter should be the first person in the family to go to college.
Rice University.
But my mom has a backbone of steel, and she stood up to her dad. She went to Rice University, got a degree in math, graduating in 1956. And she went to work at Shell as a computer programmer. Now, my mom used to tell me she very deliberately didn't learn how to type. She said, look, it was the 1950s. I understood the world I was living. She said, I didn't want to be walking down a hallway and have a man stop me and say, sweetheart, would you type this for me? My mom wanted to be able to smile very, very sweetly. And with a clean conscience say, I would love to help you out. But I don't know how to type. I guess you're going to have to use me as a computer programmer instead. My mom turned 80 last year. She's a woman of incredible strength of character. She's been a best friend to me my whole life. She is a loving and incredible grandmother to these two precious little girls. And then I think of my dad. Many of y'all have gotten to meet my father.
He's awesome. He's a saint. He's a saint.
Let's put it this way. In our family, I'm the shy and soft-spoken one.
Wow.
My dad was born in Cuba. And as a teenager, my father fought in the Cuban Revolution. And he was thrown in prison and tortured. He fled Cuba in 1957 when he was 18 years old. He had nothing. He had $100 that was sewn into his underwear. And he washed dishes making 50 cents an hour. Paid his way through school, went on to start a small business with my mom. Today, my dad is a pastor. He travels the country preaching the gospel. Now, my entire life, my father has been my hero. But what he said to me over and over again when I was a boy is he would say, when we faced oppression in Cuba, I had a place to flee to. If we lose our freedom here, where do we go? That is why each and every one of us is here tonight. This is the live free or die state.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
We are here because we are not prepared to go quietly into the night. We will not give up on our children and grandchildren. We will fight for liberty. We will fight for the Constitution. And I am convinced if we stand together, we can bring back that shining city on a hill, that last best hope for mankind, that is the United States of America.
Yes.
Thank you. And then I'm happy to answer or dodge now any question you like. Yes, sir.
How'd you do all that without a teleprompter?
Well, you know, I'd planned to bring a teleprompter, but they were all being used in Washington.
Actually,
Yeah.
I got a question. Right now in Iowa, there's 4 laws. Browns, Jones, Weaver, and Hodges versus Iowa that all deny a person their rights under the 5th, 6th, and 14th Amendments of the Constitution to be able to see evidence against them in a misdemeanor trial, to be able to defend themselves in a misdemeanor trial. And I wanted to get your opinion on that as a senator for Solicitor General, how you feel about that, and also why it's important that our Constitution in those areas are protected. Thank you, Senator.
Right. Well, thank you for that question. The question was about... Oh, hold on a second, Caroline. You're getting too heavy. Oh. Daddy needs to hit the gym more. The question was about a series of cases that are being litigated in Iowa that are endeavoring to protect the civil liberties of criminal defendants. I will confess I'm not familiar with the specific litigation to which you're referring. So let me speak generally, because without studying the cases, I don't want to give an opinion without knowing exactly what's going on there. But what I will say is that I have spent literally my entire life fighting to defend the Constitution. And believing in the Bill of Rights. You know, when I was in law school, I went to law school not far from here. I went to law school at Harvard. Which I'll tell you, my father refers to that time as missionary work. But there was an amusing coffee cup that one of the conservative student groups did that was a liberal's Bill of Rights. And when you put hot liquid in the coffee cup, the Second Amendment disappeared, the Takings Clause disappeared, and the 10th Amendment disappeared. Look, I believe in all 10 of the amendments in the Bill of Rights. And we need to vigorously protect every one of our constitutional liberties, including the rights and liberties of criminal defendants, to protect their rights, and every one of us is entitled to due process of law.
14.1.2?
Every part of the Constitution
Wonderful.
needs to be enforced fully.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
In the back, I see a hand.
Yeah, way back here.
Yeah.
He is standing, yeah.
I am standing.
It's a tough crowd.
Three things that I would ask your opinion on. Number one, balanced budget. Number two, term limits for those, people in Congress. And get rid of lobbyists. What do you think of those three things?
Yes, the lobbyists.
Yes. Hell yes. And listen, get rid of lobbyists. We have a constitutional right to petition our government. So I wouldn't muzzle the citizenry from lobbying, but what I can tell you is this. As president, I would be prepared to say to leaders of both parties, if you send me a bill that is filled with corporate welfare and pork and cronyism, I will veto it.
Yes. Thank you.
The right to petition government be a public matter.
Squeeze in and take a
Lobbyists,
nice
shouldn't they
picture
be
with you?
out in front during your session in Congress and not in the back room somewhere?
So, look, every citizen has a right to speak out and petition government, but the problem is not the citizens speaking. The problem is the politicians.
Yes, I agree.
Who are captive to special interests in Washington.
They allow themselves to be captive.
And so, for example, one of the things I've called for is a lifetime ban on any member of Congress ever becoming a lobbyist.
And their staff.
If you want to serve in Congress, you're not going to come back and get rich parlaying those friendships.
Good. That's good.
I see it. Yes, sir.
Yes, Senator, as a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee, you're probably aware of the Veterans Choice Program that the VA administers for our veterans that live more than 40 miles from a veteran facility, or you have to wait more than 30 days for an appointment.
Yes.
We've all heard the horror stories. I have personal friends who have first-hand accounts of being told they still don't qualify to use Veterans Choice. They schedule appointments 28 days out. They show up and it's like, oh, your doctor's on vacation. What do you plan to do to reform and overhaul the Veterans Administration so that our veterans get the care and quality service that they deserve?
It's a great question. It's a very, very important question. We need to bring two things to the VA. First of all, the scandal at the VA of the delays and the hidden books and the hidden waiting lists that have cost the lives of our veterans is completely unacceptable. And there needs to be meaningful accountability. People need to lose their jobs, and if needed, people need to go to jail.
Why only one person fired?
But secondly, you're right, the Veterans Choice Bill has so little teeth in it. How many vets here have been able to use the Veterans Choice Bill?
Had trouble with it.
As a practical, everyone I talk to, when they've tried to use it, they have trouble with it. The 40-mile delay. In my view, we need to reform the VA so that every veteran has the right to access the doctor of his or her choice at any facility.
Thank you.
And that's what I'll fight for as president. All right, we'll do one final question. Yes, sir.
All right, when you're at the debate against Joe Biden, because Hillary has no chance, how are you going to attack him?
So the question was, when I'm at the debate against Joe Biden, because Hillary has no chance, how am I going to attack him? Listen, I am a big believer in the power of truth.
That's right.
The truth is the Obama agenda is a manifest disaster. And Joe Biden, if he's the nominee, or Hillary Clinton, or Bernie Sanders, or some other 75-year-old socialist, they find something. It doesn't really matter. They're all running on the same thing. Have you noticed, by the way, I'm going to answer your question, but I'm going to take it aside. I was down in South Carolina. A reporter asked me, what are you going to do, the reporter said, with the fact that Republicans are all a bunch of old, white guys. And I kind of stopped for a second. I said, now wait a second. Have you looked at the current Democratic field? Have you looked at Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden? Good God, I think I saw on the internet, it's like that 70s show, it's like they're fishing out. I saw on the internet a Dukakis 2016. And you compare it to the Republican side, where you've got 2 Hispanic sons of immigrants from Cuba. You have a son of Indian immigrants in Bobby Jindal. You have a world-renowned African-American surgeon. You have a CEO of a Fortune 50 company who's female. The contrast is night and day. And every bit as part of that, it's not just the generations, but the ideas of the Democrats are straight out of the 1970s. I'm actually expecting them to bring back disco next year. So, in terms of what to say to Joe Biden, let's take, for example, I am thrilled anytime Obama or Hillary or Joe Biden or anyone else brings up income inequality. Why is that? Because it's increased dramatically under their agenda. The top 1%, the millionaires and billionaires, today earn a higher share of our income than any year since 1928. It is working men and women. We have the lowest percentage of Americans working since the late 1970s.
Yep.
Income inequality is increased under big government. The rich get richer. If you walk the corridors of power in the Obama administration, you've gotten fat and happy. But working men and women are getting hammered. And we are going to turn it around. The simple response to Joe Biden is, we've tried your policies, they don't work, millions of Americans are hurting, the Bill of Rights is under assault, and you've laid wreckage to the world. It's time to get back to what built America and made it strong. Thank you very much.
I just want you to know your wife. I always tell people when